Welcome to the shop, everyone. Today on the 454 build, we're going to be clearancing the oil pan so it'll sit down flush with that high volume oil pump. And also with the oil pump, I have found some issues with it that we need to take care of. Then when we get done with that, we're going to be clearancing the crank scraper so that reciprocating assembly can spin freely. So let's get this thing unbagged and get at it. Now, one thing that I noticed with the oil pan is it would rock back and forth, and I can see on the oil pump sort of a shiny area there where the pan is hitting it. Now these high volume oil pumps are, usually taller because the gears are larger in them, and so that makes them hit stuff that normally a stock pump wouldn't. So right there, I need to remove some material out of the pan. And I do like putting stuff on the engine without a gasket and then getting it where it fits. Then I know with a gasket on there, I'll have even more of a safety margin, maybe an 1/8 of an inch more. So grinding that out, give you guys a look. All right. So another thing I noticed about this pump is when I had it installed, it seems to have a rock to it. And the rear main cap, I know it's flat and square because I had already surfaced it. So let's take it off and put it on the surface plate and see if it definitely is the oil pump. So I gotta sit on there and look at that. Quite a bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and disassemble, the oil pump, because anytime you sand stuff, you get grit and everything. And then it also gives me the opportunity to tear the pump apart and just like surface everything, round edges, buff things, just putting a human touch on it. Because most things these days are made by a machine, and a machine is just, it has no idea, it's just pumping parts out. Alright, so let's get it apart. And I noticed this pump, it's supposed to be a better pump, and it looks like the gears have support on both sides than just one side. So to get that flat, I just put some bluing on the bottom of it and sanded it on a flat surface until the bluing was gone. So let's put it back on the surface plate and see how it sits. Look at that. Perfect. And something else I did is like the oil relief valve inside the oil pump, it just didn't feel real smooth. So I get some emery cloth with a die grinder, and I actually run it up in the holes, and it deburrs them and smooths passages and stuff, and it's just that nice human touch. Makes everything better. And I'll also check the surface on that. I'll just, push it back and forth on some sandpaper until the pattern is the whole way across. That's how I can tell when it's perfectly flat. And this part here wasn't bad at all either. It was really in good shape. Alright, that's looking nice. Alright, so let's get everything cleaned up, blown off, and we're ready to go back together. And a lot of times on these oil pumps, when I do disassemble them, I do like using an assembly lube just because it's thicker. And because it's thicker, it takes up more clearances, so when you prime the engine, they just seem to pick oil up very quickly. So that's one reason I like using an assembly lube, because it's quite a bit thicker than just standard oil. Alright, it's going together really well. Let's get that plate on there and see how it feels. Still spins nice. Alright, so let's put the bolts in. I like putting a dab of Loctite on each one. Alright, so yeah, it turns really nice, feels really nice and smooth, so very happy with that. Alright, so when we set it on the engine, I can set the oil pan on there now, and you notice it's orange now. I had to paint it. But it sits flush onto the pan rails of the block, no rocking, so that's good. I needed that little bit of clearance there. Good job. Alright, so the next thing is this crank scraper. And I'm going to set it down there, I'm going to bolt it down, and I'm going to rotate assembly around to where it just hits spots. And then I'm going to take a Sharpie and kind of try to draw on it to see, you know, the amount of material I feel like needs to come off to give me a safe margin. So I'll just go around and rotate it as far as I can, and then just mark areas where I need to remove material. Alright, so it's time to start grinding some of these areas down. This one right here, I'm going to use a die grinder. And also some of the spots where it's kind of hard to get a die grinder in there, kind of because it's square, I'm just going to use a saw to like saw slots in there. I got most of the material I can, then maybe finish it up with a file. Alright, so I had put it back on the engine, and those are the areas I marked where I want a little bit more material took off. Alright, it's starting to look really, really good, guys. All rounded off. No sharp edges, no burrs. Nice. Alright, let's go try that on the engine, see how it does. And if you notice, you know, where the block is and where that is, you can see how far it reaches into the crankshaft area to wipe off extra oil that normally would be trying to climb up the inside of the block. So we got a clearance now. Everything is rotating around, I think with a safety margin that I can live with. And so all this has worked out really well. So that's one more step, getting closer to getting that oil pan on there for good. And as always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please give me a like, ring the bell, share it, subscribe, and we hope to see y'all on the next project. Thanks so much.